What if sleep was not a gift, but a curse you could escape only in death? Imagine a family for over a century, haunted by an affliction that stole their nights, their dreams, and ultimately their sanity. They say the eyes are the windows to the soul. But what happens when those windows are forced to stay open, witnessing every waking nightmare for generations? This is the story of the Blackwood family, a bloodline forever marked by the wakeful curse of 1881. A story pieced together from a secret diary filled with whispers of madness and a desperate search for a peace that never came. Stay with us as we unravel the chilling legacy of the family that never slept. Chapter 1. The First Generation, a Wedding and a Warning. The year is 1881. A thick, oppressive fog clings to the cobblestone streets of the small, secluded town of Havenwood. It's a place of quiet whispers and long shadows, a town where secrets are currency and tradition is law. Our story begins not with a scream, but with a celebration. The grand wedding of Elara, the town's radiant jewel, to the enigmatic and wealthy newcomer, Silas Blackwood. The church bells chime, but their joyous peals seem to get lost in the heavy mist, their echoes sounding more like a mournful toll. Elara, with her cascade of golden hair and eyes the color of a summer sky. What if sleep was not a gift, but a curse you could escape only in death? Imagine a family for over a century, haunted by an affliction that stole their nights, their dreams, and ultimately their sanity. They say the eyes are the windows to the soul. But what happens when those windows are forced to stay open, witnessing every waking nightmare for generations? This is the story of the Blackwood family, a bloodline forever marked by the wakeful curse of 1881. A story pieced together from a secret diary filled with whispers of madness and a desperate search for a peace that never came. Stay with us as we unravel the chilling legacy of the family that never slept. What if sleep was not a gift, but a curse you could escape only in death? Imagine a family for over a century, haunted by an affliction that stole their nights, their dreams, and ultimately their sanity. They say the eyes are the windows to the soul. But what happens when those windows are forced to stay open, witnessing every waking nightmare for generations? This is the story of the Blackwood family, a bloodline forever marked by the wakeful curse of 1881. A story pieced together from a secret diary filled with whispers of madness and a desperate search for a peace that never came. Stay with us as we unravel the chilling legacy of the family that never slept. What if sleep was not a gift, but a curse you could escape only in death? Imagine a family for over a century, haunted by an affliction that stole their nights, their dreams, and ultimately their sanity. They say the eyes are the windows to the soul. But what happens when those windows are forced to stay open, witnessing every waking nightmare for generations? This is the story of the Blackwood family, a bloodline forever marked by the wakeful curse of 1881. A story pieced together from a secret diary filled with whispers of madness and a desperate search for a peace that never came. Stay with us as we unravel the chilling legacy of the family that never slept. Chapter 1. The First Generation, a Wedding and a Warning. The year is 1881. A thick, oppressive fog clings to the cobblestone streets of the small, secluded town of Havenwood. It's a place of quiet whispers and long shadows, a town where secrets are currency and tradition is law. Our story begins not with a scream, but with a celebration. The grand wedding of Elara, the town's radiant jewel, to the enigmatic and wealthy newcomer, Silas Blackwood. The church bells chime, but their joyous peals seem to get lost in the heavy mist, their echoes sounding more like a mournful toll. Alara, with her cascade of golden hair and eyes the color of a summer sky. Chapter 1. The First Generation, A Wedding and a Warning. The year is 1881. A thick, oppressive fog clings to the cobblestone streets of the small, secluded town of Havenwood. It's a place of quiet whispers and long shadows, a town where secrets are currency and tradition is law. Our story begins not with a scream, but with a celebration. The grand wedding of Alara, the town's radiant jewel, to the enigmatic and wealthy newcomer, Silas Blackwood. The church bells chime, but their joyous peals seem to get lost in the heavy mist, their echoes sounding more like a mournful toll. Alara, with her cascade of golden hair and eyes the color of a summer sky. What if sleep was not a gift, but a curse you could escape only in death? Imagine a family, for over a century, haunted by an affliction that stole their nights, their dreams, and ultimately their sanity. They say the eyes are the windows to the soul. But what happens when those windows are forced to stay open, witnessing every waking nightmare for generations? This is the story of the Blackwood family, a bloodline forever marked by the wakeful curse of 1881. A story pieced together from a secret diary filled with whispers of madness and a desperate search for a peace that never came. Stay with us as we unravel the chilling legacy of the family that never slept. Chapter 1. The First Generation, A Wedding and a Warning. The year is 1881. A thick, oppressive fog clings to the cobblestone streets of the small, secluded town of Havenwood. It's a place of quiet whispers and long shadows, a town where secrets are currency and tradition is law. Our story begins not with a scream, but with a celebration. The grand wedding of Alara, the town's radiant jewel, to the enigmatic and wealthy newcomer, Silas Blackwood. The church bells chime, but their joyous peals seem to get lost in the heavy mist, their echoes sounding more like a mournful toll. Alara, with her cascade of golden hair and eyes the color of a summer sky. What if sleep was not a gift, but a curse you could escape only in death? Imagine a family, for over a century, haunted by an affliction that stole their nights, their dreams, and ultimately their sanity. They say the eyes are the windows to the soul. But what happens when those windows are forced to stay open, witnessing every waking nightmare for generations? This is the story of the Blackwood family, a bloodline forever marked by the wakeful curse of 1881. Haunted by an affliction that stole their nights, their dreams, and ultimately their sanity. They say the eyes are the windows to the soul. But what happens when those windows are forced to stay open, witnessing every waking nightmare for generations? This is the story of the Blackwood family, a bloodline forever marked by the wakeful curse of 1881. A story pieced together from a secret diary filled with whispers of madness and a desperate search for a peace that never came. Stay with us as we unravel the chilling legacy of the family that never slept. Chapter 1. The First Generation, A Wedding and a Warning. The year is 1881. A thick, oppressive fog clings to the cobblestone streets of the small, secluded town of Havenwood. It's a place of quiet whispers and long shadows, a town where secrets are currency and tradition is law. Our story begins not with a scream, but with a celebration. The grand wedding of Alara, the town's radiant jewel, to the enigmatic and wealthy newcomer, Silas Blackwood. The church bells chime, but their joyous peals seem to get lost in the heavy mist, their echoes sounding more like a mournful toll. Alara, with her cascade of golden hair and eyes the color of a summer sky. What if sleep was not a gift, but a curse you could escape only in death? Imagine a family, for over a century, haunted by an affliction that stole their nights, their dreams, and ultimately their sanity. They say the eyes are the windows to the soul. But what happens when those windows are forced to stay open, witnessing every waking nightmare for generations? This is the story of the Blackwood family, a bloodline forever marked by the wakeful curse of 1881. A story pieced together from a secret diary filled with whispers of madness and a desperate search for a peace that never came. Stay with us as we unravel the chilling legacy of the family that never slept. Chapter 1. The First Generation, A Wedding and a Warning. The year is 1881. A thick, oppressive fog clings to the cobblestone streets of the small, secluded town of Havenwood. It's a place of quiet whispers and long shadows, a town where secrets are currency and tradition is law. Our story begins not with a scream, but with a celebration. The grand wedding of Elara, the town's radiant jewel, to the enigmatic and wealthy newcomer, Silas Blackwood. The church bells chime, but their joyous peals seem to get lost in the heavy mist, their echoes sounding more like a mournful toll. Elara, with her cascade of golden hair and eyes the color of a summer sky. Chapter 1. The First Generation, A Wedding and a Warning. The year is 1881. A thick, oppressive fog clings to the cobblestone streets of the small, secluded town of Havenwood. It's a place of quiet whispers and long shadows, a town where secrets are currency and tradition is law. Our story begins not with a scream, but with a celebration. The grand wedding of Elara, the town's radiant jewel, to the enigmatic and wealthy newcomer, Silas Blackwood. The church bells chime, but their joyous peals seem to get lost in the heavy mist, their echoes sounding more like a mournful toll. Elara, with her cascade of golden hair and eyes the color of a summer sky. What if sleep was not a gift, but a curse you could escape only in death? Imagine a family for over a century, haunted by an affliction that stole their nights, their dreams, and ultimately their sanity. They say the eyes are the windows to the soul. But what happens when those windows are forced to stay open, witnessing every waking nightmare for generations? This is the story of the Blackwood family, a bloodline forever marked by the wakeful curse of 1881. A story pieced together from a secret diary filled with whispers of madness and a desperate search for a peace that never came. Stay with us as we unravel the chilling legacy of the family that never slept. Chapter 1. The First Generation, A Wedding and a Warning. The year is 1881. A thick, oppressive fog clings to the cobblestone streets of the small, secluded town of Havenwood. It's a place of quiet whispers and long shadows, a town where secrets are currency and tradition is law. Our story begins not with a scream, but with a celebration. The grand wedding of Elara, the town's radiant jewel, to the enigmatic and wealthy newcomer, Silas Blackwood. The church bells chime, but their joyous peals seem to get lost in the heavy mist, their echoes sounding more like a mournful toll. Elara, with her cascade of golden hair and eyes the color of a summer sky, is the embodiment of life and light. Silas, in stark contrast, is a figure of captivating darkness. His handsome features are perpetually etched with a deep, unreadable sorrow, and his eyes, dark as a moonless night, seem to hold ancient secrets. He arrived in Havenwood a year prior, his immense wealth and mysterious past the talk of the town. He bought the old sprawling mansion on the hill, a place the locals called the Rookery, and lived a life of quiet seclusion until he laid eyes on Elara. Their courtship was a whirlwind of lavish gifts and poetic promises, sweeping Ilara off her feet. Her parents, though wary of Silas's guarded nature, were swayed by his charm and the security he could offer their daughter. But not everyone was so easily enchanted. Ilara's grandmother, a woman with eyes that had seen too much and a mind that danced with the whispers of the old world, saw something in Silas that chilled her to the bone. On the eve of the wedding, she pulled Ilara aside, her voice a fragile, urgent whisper. "He is a man without dreams, my child," she had warned, her gnarled fingers clutching Ilara's arm. "And a man without dreams is a man without a soul." Ilara, lost in the intoxicating haze of young love, dismissed her grandmother's words as the ramblings of old age. But the old woman's warning hung in the air, a phantom presence at the otherwise joyous occasion. "The wedding is a grand affair. The church is adorned with lilies and lace, the air thick with the scent of old wood and burning incense. Silas stands at the altar, a statue of stoic elegance. When Ilara walks down the aisle, a collective gasp fills the church. She is breathtaking. But as she reaches the altar and takes Silas's hand, a sudden, unnatural chill sweeps through the congregation. The candles flicker wildly, casting dancing, distorted shadows on the stone walls. Silas's hand is cold, unnaturally so, like marble. Ilara shivers, but his grip is firm, almost possessive. He leans in, his voice a low, hypnotic murmur meant only for her. "My love, my light, forever and always." The reception at the Rookery is an event Havenwood will speak of for decades. The mansion, once a dark, foreboding silhouette against the skyline, is now ablaze with light. Music spills from its open windows, and the laughter of the guests echoes through its grand halls. But as the night deepens, a subtle, unsettling strangeness begins to permeate the festivities. Silas, though a gracious host, never seems to tire. His energy is boundless, his smile never faltering. He moves through the crowd with an unnatural grace, his eyes always finding Ilara, a silent, watchful sentinel. He doesn't eat, he doesn't drink, he simply is. As the last of the guests depart, leaving behind a trail of well-wishes and discarded champagne flutes, Silas leads Ilara to their bridal chamber. The room is opulent, dominated by a large four-poster bed draped in velvet curtains. A fire crackles in the hearth, casting a warm, inviting glow. Silas turns to Ilara, his dark eyes finally showing a flicker of an emotion she can't quite decipher. It's not love, not as she knows it. It's something deeper, something akin to a desperate, all-consuming hunger. "You are tired, my love," he says, his voice a soft caress. "Rest now." Ilara, exhausted from the day's excitement, sinks into the plush mattress, the soft linens a welcome embrace. Silas, however, does not join her. He pulls a chair to the bedside, his silhouette a dark, unmoving presence in the firelight. "Aren't you coming to bed?" Ilara asks, her voice heavy with sleep. Silas's smile is a sad, gentle curve of his lips. "I will watch over you, my love. I do not rest." Ilara is too tired to question his strange words. She drifts off to the rhythmic crackling of the fire and the unsettling feeling of being watched. The next morning, Ilara awakens to find Silas in the exact same position, his eyes still fixed on her. He hasn't moved an inch. There are no signs of fatigue on his face, no hint of the long, sleepless night. He simply smiles, the same sad, gentle smile. "Good morning, my love," he says, his voice as smooth and placid as a still, dark lake. The days that follow fall into a strange, unsettling rhythm. Silas is the perfect husband in every way. He is attentive, doting, and showers Ilara with affection and gifts. He anticipates her every need, her every desire. But he never sleeps. He is a constant, unblinking presence in her life. At first, Ilara tries to ignore it. She tells herself it is a quirk, an eccentricity of a man so deeply in love, he cannot bear to close his eyes and miss a single moment with her. But as the weeks turn into months, the truth begins to dawn on her, a slow, creeping horror. She starts a diary, a secret place to pour out the fears she cannot voice to anyone else. Her first entry is filled with the breathless excitement of a new bride, but soon the tone shifts, the elegant script becoming more frantic, more desperate. October 12th, 1881. Another night has passed, and Silas has not slept. He sits by my bed, his eyes open, watching me. He says he is protecting me, but from what? The silence of this house is deafening. I am beginning to feel as though I am the one in a cage, and he is my ever-watchful keeper. Ilara's health begins to decline. Dark circles appear under her eyes, her once vibrant spirit dimming. The constant, silent vigil of her husband is taking its toll. She feels a growing, suffocating sense of unease. The rookery, once a symbol of her new grand life, now feels like a prison. One night, driven by a desperate need for answers, she confronts him. "Silas, please," she begs, her voice trembling. "Tell me what is wrong. Why don't you sleep?" Silas's mask of serene composure finally cracks. A wave of profound, ancient sadness washes over his features. He takes her hands, his touch still as cold as a tombstone. "It is a curse, my love," he confesses, his voice a hoarse whisper. "A curse that has plagued my family for generations. We are the wakeful. We are denied the solace of sleep, the respite of dreams. We are forever bound to the waking world. Our minds a never-ending torrent of thoughts and memories." Ilara stares at him, her heart pounding in her chest. A curse. Her grandmother's words come rushing back to her. A man without dreams. "What does this mean for us?" she asks, her voice barely audible. Silas's grip on her hands tightens. "It means I will love you with every waking moment of my existence. It means I will cherish you in a way no mortal man ever could." But Ilara hears the unspoken words, the terrifying truth that lies beneath his poetic pronouncements. It means their life together will be lived under the shadow of this terrible affliction. A few months later, Ilara discovers she is pregnant. The news brings a fleeting moment of joy, a ray of light in the growing darkness of her life. But a new, more terrifying fear takes root in her heart. Will their child inherit this wakeful curse? Silas, for the first time since their wedding, shows a glimmer of genuine hope. "Perhaps," he whispers, his hand resting on her swollen belly, "a new generation will break the cycle. Perhaps your light, my love, is strong enough to banish the shadows." But as Ilara looks into his dark, sleepless eyes, she sees not hope, but a desperate, futile prayer. She knows, with a chilling certainty that settles deep in her bones, that this is not the end of the curse. It is only the beginning. And as she dips her pen into the inkwell to record her fears in her diary, she has no idea that she is chronicling the first chapter of a madness that will consume her family for 100 years. Chapter 2. The Second Generation. The Sleepless Child and the Whispering Walls. 9 months later, in the dead of a harsh, unforgiving winter, Ilara gives birth to a son. They name him Alistair. He is a beautiful child with his mother's golden hair and his father's dark, soulful eyes. For a few precious weeks, a fragile peace settles over the rookery. Ilara, holding her son in her arms, allows herself to hope. She watches him as he sleeps, his tiny chest rising and falling in a steady, peaceful rhythm, and prays that he has been spared. Silas, too, seems to find a semblance of solace in his son's peaceful slumber. He spends hours by the cradle, his gaze fixed on the sleeping infant, a silent, sleepless guardian. But the hope is short-lived. As Alistair grows, it becomes terrifyingly clear that he is not like other children. He is a wakeful child. He rarely cries, he rarely fusses, but he never, ever sleeps for more than a few minutes at a time. His dark eyes are always open, always watching, taking in the world with an unnerving, adult-like intensity. The local doctor, a man of science and logic, is baffled. He prods and pokes the child, listens to his steady heartbeat, and finds nothing physically wrong. He is a healthy boy, Mrs. Blackwood, he declares, his brow furrowed in confusion. Perhaps he is simply a light sleeper. But Alara knows the truth. She sees the same haunted, restless energy in her son that she sees in her husband. She sees the curse, a dark, insidious seed that has taken root in the next generation. Her diary entries become a desperate, frantic chronicle of a mother's unraveling sanity. May 3rd, 1899. Alistair is 10 years old today. He did not want a party. He said the laughter of the other children is too loud. He spends his days in the library, surrounded by books. He has read more than any man in Havenwood. He learns with a frightening speed, his mind a sponge that never stops absorbing. But he does not play, he does not laugh, and he does not sleep. He tells me he hears whispers in the walls of this house, the voices of those who came before. I fear this house, this curse, is consuming him. The rookery, once a symbol of Silas's wealth and Ilara's dreams, transforms into a place of suffocating silence and creeping dread. The grand echoing halls seem to amplify the family's terrible secret. Ilara, trapped in this gilded cage with her sleepless husband and son, begins to wither. Her vibrant spirit is extinguished, replaced by a hollow-eyed, trembling anxiety. She is a prisoner of the curse, a silent, unwilling participant in her family's slow descent into madness. Alistair, unlike his father, does not bear his sleeplessness with stoic resignation. The curse manifests in him as a raw, nervous energy, a constant, twitching restlessness. He is a boy trapped in a state of perpetual, heightened awareness. He hears every creak of the old house, every rustle of the leaves outside his window, every whisper of the wind. He claims the house speaks to him, that the walls hold the memories of the Blackwoods who came before, the generations of sleepless souls who walked these same halls. He spends hours with his ear pressed against the cold, damp wallpaper, his eyes wide and unfocused, listening to a chorus of voices only he can hear. Silas, watching his son, is consumed by a deep, gnawing guilt. He sees the curse twisting Alistair's young mind, warping his perception of reality. He tries to reach out to his son, to share the burden of their shared affliction. But Alistair is a solitary, withdrawn child. He retreats further and further into the world of his books and the whispering walls of the rookery. The town of Havenwood, once so enamored with the enigmatic Blackwoods, now watches them with a mixture of fear and suspicion. The family's reclusiveness, Ilara's visible decline, and the strange, unsettling intensity of young Alistair become the subject of hushed, fearful gossip. The Blackwoods are no longer just eccentric. They are an omen, a dark stain on the town's quiet, orderly existence. One evening, a visiting cousin, a young woman named Beatrice, comes to stay at the rookery. She is a bright, cheerful soul, and Ilara hopes her presence will bring a much-needed breath of fresh air into the stagnant, suffocating atmosphere of the house. Beatrice is initially charmed by the grandeur of the rookery and the quiet, scholarly nature of her young cousin, Alistair. But as the days pass, she too begins to feel the oppressive, unnatural weight of the house. She notices that Silas never seems to tire, that Alistair's eyes are always open, always watching. She notices the way Alara flinches at sudden noises, the way her hands tremble as she pours the tea. One night, Beatrice is awakened by a strange, rhythmic thumping sound. It seems to be coming from Alistair's room. Cautiously, she creeps down the hallway and presses her ear to his door. The thumping is accompanied by a low, frantic whispering. She pushes the door open a crack and peeks inside. He pulls his son away from the wall, his hands gentle but firm. "Alistair, my son, what are you doing?" he asks, his voice laced with a desperate urgency. Alistair looks at his father, but his eyes seem to see something far beyond the confines of the room. "They are so loud tonight, Father," he whispers, his voice a hoarse, rattling sound. "The ones who came before. They are telling me how it ends." Beatrice, unable to bear the madness of the house any longer, leaves the next morning, her cheerful spirit shattered. She spreads the story of what she saw, and the legend of the mad Blackwoods of the rookery is born. Alara, her heart broken, her mind fractured, retreats to her room, a ghost in her own home. She stops writing in her diary, the final entry, a single, tear-blotted sentence. August 19, 1908, I can no longer tell the difference between the waking world and the nightmares. I am lost in the shadows of this house, and I fear I will never find my way out. A few years later, Alara dies in her sleep. It is a quiet, peaceful end, a mercy she was denied for so long in her waking life. The doctor calls it a heart failure, but the people of Havenwood whisper that she died of a broken heart, a spirit finally crushed by the weight of the Blackwood curse. Silas is a man hollowed out by grief. He has lost his light, the one person who made his sleepless existence bearable. He and Alistair are now alone in the vast, silent emptiness of the rookery, two sleepless souls bound together by a curse that shows no signs of loosening its grip. Alistair, now a young man, continues his strange, solitary existence. The whispering walls are his only companions, the voices of his sleepless ancestors, his only comfort. He becomes obsessed with the family's history, with the origin of the curse. He spends his days and nights poring over ancient texts, searching for an answer, a cure, a way to silence the voices that plague him. And he, the sleepless child who hears the whispers of the past, is its next intended victim. He knows that if he is to survive, he must find a way to fight back. He must find a way to break the cycle before the whispering walls of the rookery claim him, just as they claimed his mother. His own diary, which he begins to keep in a secret compartment in the library, is not one of despair, but of a grim, determined resolve. The second generation of the wakeful will not be a victim. It will be a hunter. Chapter 3. A Glimmer of Hope and the Shadow of Science. The dawn of the 20th century brings with it a new era of discovery and a fervent belief in the power of science to conquer the darkest corners of human existence. For Alistair Blackwood, now a man in his late 20s, this new age offers a tantalizing, almost unbearable glimmer of hope. He is no longer the frightened boy banging his head against the wall. He is a man of sharp intellect and fierce determination, his sleepless mind a formidable tool in his obsessive quest to understand and ultimately defeat the family curse. After the death of his mother, and with his father Silas, retreating into a silent, grief-stricken shell, Alistair takes it upon himself to become the family's reluctant historian and would-be savior. He devours books on medicine, psychology, and the burgeoning field of neuroscience. He corresponds with doctors and scientists across the country, his letters filled with detailed, unnervingly lucid descriptions of his and his father's condition, carefully omitting any mention of a curse. He frames their affliction as a rare, hereditary neurological disorder, a puzzle for the modern scientific mind to solve. His relentless pursuit of knowledge leads him to Dr. Aris Thorne, a brilliant but controversial physician from Boston, who specializes in sleep disorders and the dark, unexplored territories of the human psyche. Dr. Thorne, intrigued by Alistair's letters, agrees to travel to the secluded town of Havenwood to study the Blackwood case firsthand. Dr. Thorne's arrival at the rookery is like a stone thrown into a still, stagnant pond. He is a man of brisk, confident energy, his sharp, analytical gaze a stark contrast to the dreamlike, haunted atmosphere of the old mansion. He brings with him an array of strange, gleaming medical instruments and a no-nonsense scientific approach that initially fills Alistair with a sense of cautious optimism. Dr. Thorne conducts a series of tests on both Alistair and Silas. He measures their heart rates, their body temperatures, their reflexes. He takes blood samples and asks them a barrage of questions about their thoughts, their memories, their perceptions of reality. Silas is a reluctant, almost phantom-like participant in these experiments. He answers Dr. Thorne's questions in a quiet, detached monotone, his eyes holding a deep, weary sadness that seems to transcend the doctor's scientific understanding. Alistair, on the other hand, is an eager and active participant. He engages Dr. Thorne in long, complex discussions about the nature of consciousness, the function of dreams, and the delicate, often blurred line between sanity and madness. He finally has someone who will listen, someone who will not dismiss his experiences as the ramblings of a madman. Dr. Thorne is fascinated by the Blackwoods. He has never encountered a case like it. Their complete inability to sleep, coupled with their heightened cognitive abilities, defies all known medical understanding. He begins to formulate a theory, a radical, almost heretical idea that challenges the very foundations of his medical training. It is as if your minds are stuck, he explains to Alistair one evening, his eyes gleaming with intellectual excitement, stuck in a state of perpetual, unwavering consciousness. You are not simply insomniacs, you are post-human, a new, terrifying evolution of the human mind. Dr. Thorne's theory, though frightening, also offers a strange, twisted kind of validation. Alistair is not mad, he is different, evolved. But the doctor's fascination soon takes on a darker, more obsessive quality. He becomes less of a healer and more of a collector of rare, exotic specimens. He begins to push Alistair to his mental and emotional limits, conducting increasingly invasive and ethically questionable experiments. He deprives him of sensory input, subjects him to jarring, disorienting stimuli, and documents his reactions with a cold, clinical detachment. Alistair, desperate for a cure, willingly submits to these experiments, hoping that each new test will bring him one step closer to an answer. But as the weeks turn into months, he begins to see a change in himself, a frightening internal shift. The doctor's relentless prodding is not healing him, it is awakening something. The whispers in the walls, the voices of his sleepless ancestors are growing louder, more insistent. They are no longer just faint, indecipherable murmurs. They are clear, distinct voices, each with its own story of madness and despair. He starts to have waking visions, flashes of the past so vivid and real he can no longer distinguish them from the present. He sees his great-grandfather, a man he has only known through a faded portrait, pacing the very same library, his eyes wide with a sleepless, paranoid terror. He sees his mother as a young bride, her face filled with a hopeful, naive love that is slowly, cruelly extinguished by the creeping shadows of the rookery. He tries to explain these experiences to Dr. Thorne, but the doctor dismisses them as hallucinations, a predictable side effect of his unique and fascinating condition. He is not interested in the why of the curse, only the how of its biological mechanics. The breaking point comes one stormy night. Dr. Thorne, in his relentless pursuit of data, decides to conduct an experiment that pushes Alistair too far. He injects him with a powerful sedative, a drug that would put a normal man into a deep, dreamless sleep for days. He wants to see if he can force Alistair's sleepless mind into a state of unconsciousness. The effect on Alistair is not sleep, but a terrifying waking nightmare. His mind, unable to shut down, is flooded with a chaotic, overwhelming torrent of images and voices. The whispers in the walls become a deafening roar. He sees not just the past, but the future. He sees a long, unbroken line of Blackwoods, each one a prisoner of the wakeful curse, their faces contorted in a silent scream of eternal, sleepless agony. He sees a future where the curse is not just a passive affliction, but an active, hungry entity, a parasitic consciousness that feeds on the minds of its hosts. And he sees that Dr. Thorne, with his cold scientific prodding, is not a savior, but a catalyst, a fool who is unwittingly feeding the very darkness he seeks to understand. In a fit of drug-induced visionary rage, Alistair attacks Dr. Thorne. He is a man possessed, his strength unnatural, his eyes burning with a terrifying ancient light. He screams at the doctor, not in his own voice, but in a chorus of voices, the voices of his sleepless ancestors, a cacophony of rage and despair. Dr. Thorne, terrified, flees the rookery, his scientific certainty shattered, his grand theories reduced to a frightened, stammering mess. He leaves behind his instruments, his notes, and a legacy of unintended consequences. The next morning, the sedative wears off, leaving Alistair weak and trembling, his mind a fractured, chaotic landscape. He finds his father, Silas, sitting in the library, a strange, serene calmness on his face. Silas looks at his son, his dark, sleepless eyes filled with a deep, knowing pity. "You see now, don't you?" he says, his voice a quiet, mournful whisper. "This is not a disease of the body, my son. It is a sickness of the soul, and it cannot be cured by science." Alistair, his hope of a scientific solution shattered, is left with a terrible, chilling clarity. The curse is real, and it is not just inside him. It is alive, and it is growing stronger. He realizes that Dr. Thorne's experiments did not bring him closer to a cure. They brought him closer to the curse. They opened a door in his mind, a door that he now fears he will never be able to close. He returns to his diary, his handwriting now a spidery, almost illegible scrawl. He is no longer just a historian of the curse. He is its prophet. He begins to document his visions, his prophecies, of the future generations of Blackwoods who will be born into this waking nightmare. He knows that he has failed to break the cycle. He has only managed to pass the torch of madness to the next unsuspecting generation. Chapter 4. The third generation live in a time of madness. Years bleed into one another, each one a long, sleepless river of time for Alistair Blackwood. The departure of Dr. Thorne leaves a void at the rookery, a silence that is quickly filled by the escalating whispers of the curse. Alistair, now a man in his 40s, is a prisoner in his own home. his brilliant mind a battlefield where the past, present, and future wage a relentless, chaotic war. He is a gaunt, haunted figure, his eyes burning with a feverish intensity, his days and nights a blur of waking visions and frantic, prophetic diary entries. His father, Silas, the first of the wakeful Blackwoods of Havenwood, finally succumbs to the crushing weight of his eternal existence, his heart simply giving out, a quiet end to a long, sleepless life. Alistair is now completely alone, the sole heir to a cursed legacy and a sprawling, decaying mansion that has become a tomb for his sanity. He avoids the town of Havenwood, his strange, reclusive behavior solidifying the local legend of the Mad Blackwood. He is a ghost in his own life, a man out of time, forever trapped in the waking nightmare of his family's past. It is into this world of shadows and madness that a young woman named Clara stumbles, a beacon of unsuspecting light in the suffocating darkness of the rookery. Clara is a nurse, hired by the town doctor to check on the reclusive Mr. Blackwood after a particularly harsh winter. She is a woman of quiet strength and gentle compassion, her spirit unburdened by the dark, superstitious whispers of the town. When she first arrives at the rookery, she is struck by its desolate, melancholic beauty. The once grand mansion is now a place of faded opulence, its halls thick with dust and the scent of decay. She finds Alistair in the library, surrounded by a mountain of books, his face illuminated by the flickering light of a single candle. He is, to her, a figure of tragic, romantic mystery. She is not frightened by his gaunt appearance or the feverish intensity in his eyes. She sees past the madness to the lonely, tormented soul that lies beneath. Alistair, who has not had a visitor in years, is initially wary of Clara. He is guarded, his words clipped and dismissive. But Clara is persistent. She returns day after day, bringing with her not just food and medical supplies, but a sense of calm, gentle normalcy that Alistair has not known since his mother was alive. She does not ask him about his strange habits, his sleeplessness, or the whispers he claims to hear. She simply sits with him. She reads to him. She listens to his long, rambling monologues about history and philosophy. And she slowly, patiently begins to chip away at the walls he has built around himself. Alistair finds himself drawn to her in a way he cannot explain. Her presence is a soothing balm to his tormented mind. For the first time in his life, he feels a sense of peace, a quietening of the relentless, chaotic noise in his head. Against all odds, a strange, tender love begins to blossom between the mad, sleepless prophet of the rookery and the gentle, compassionate nurse. It is a love born not of grand, romantic gestures, but of quiet companionship and a shared sense of loneliness. Clara, despite the warnings of the townspeople, chooses to see the good in Alistair. She falls in love with his brilliant mind, his wounded soul, and the deep, desperate sadness in his sleepless eyes. She becomes his anchor, his connection to a world that he has long since abandoned. Alistair, in turn, clings to Clara like a drowning man clings to a piece of driftwood. He knows that his love for her is a selfish, dangerous thing. He knows that he is pulling her into his world of madness, that he is exposing her to the darkness that has consumed his family for generations. But he cannot let her go. He is a man who has been starved of light for so long that he is willing to risk everything for a single, fleeting moment of sunshine. They marry in a small, private ceremony in the overgrown, neglected gardens of the rookery. It is a far cry from the grand, opulent wedding of Alistair's parents, but for Alistair and Clara it is a moment of pure, unadulterated joy, a brief, beautiful respite from the ever-present shadow of the curse. For a few years, it seems as though love might be enough to conquer the darkness. The rookery, under Clara's gentle hand, begins to feel less like a tomb and more like a home. She fills its silent halls with flowers and music, her laughter a sound that has not been heard within its walls for decades. Alistair, with Clara by his side, finds a new sense of purpose. He is still sleepless, still haunted by his visions, but he is no longer alone in his waking nightmare. He has someone to share the burden, someone who looks at him not with fear, but with love. Then Clara becomes pregnant. The news, which should be a cause for celebration, fills Alistair with a cold, familiar dread. He knows what this means. He knows that he is about to bring another soul into the cursed lineage of the Blackwoods. He is consumed by a terrible, paralyzing fear. He cannot bear the thought of his child, of Clara's child, suffering the same fate as him. He becomes obsessed with protecting them, with finding a way to shield them from the curse. He retreats back into his books, his research becoming more frantic, more desperate. He delves into the darkest, most forbidden corners of occult literature, searching for a spell, a ritual, anything that might break the cycle. Clara watches with a growing sense of unease as the old, familiar madness begins to reclaim her husband. The brief, beautiful period of peace is over. The whispers in the walls are returning, louder and more menacing than ever before. Alistair's diary entries from this period are a chilling testament to his deteriorating mental state. He writes of a final, desperate plan, a dark, dangerous ritual that he believes will sever the curse from his bloodline forever. It is a ritual that requires a great sacrifice, a sacrifice that he is willing to make to save his child. On the night their son Daniel is born, a violent, raging storm descends upon Havenwood. The wind howls around the rookery, rattling its windows and shaking its very foundations. Inside, in the same room where he himself was born, Alistair prepares for his final, desperate act. He kisses his sleeping wife, her face serene and beautiful even in the throes of exhaustion. He looks at his newborn son, so small and so innocent, so blissfully unaware of the cursed legacy he has just inherited. "I will not let it have you," Alistair whispers, his voice thick with a mixture of love and a grim, terrible resolve. He goes down to the library, the heart of the house, the place where the whispers of his ancestors are the loudest. He performs his dark, forbidden ritual, a desperate, last-ditch attempt to outsmart a curse that has outsmarted generations of his family. The details of the ritual are lost to time, scribbled in a language that no one can decipher in the final, frantic pages of Alistair's diary. But whatever he did, it came at a terrible cost. The next morning, Clara awakens to a house that is unnaturally silent. She reads them, and for the first time, she understands the true, terrifying nature of the curse that has haunted the Blackwood family for generations. But she also finds something else in the final lucid entry of his diary written just before he performed his fatal ritual. Alistair writes of a small, desperate hope. He believes that his sacrifice, his final defiant act against the curse, may have weakened it. He believes that Daniel, the fourth generation of the Wakeful Blackwoods, may have a chance, a small, fighting chance, to live a life free from the waking nightmare that has consumed his ancestors. Clara clings to this small, fragile hope. She raises Daniel in the shadow of the rookery, a house filled with both the love of his parents and the madness of his ancestors. She knows that the curse is not gone. She can feel its presence, a cold, watchful waiting in the silent halls of the old mansion. But she also has a mother's fierce protective love, a love that she hopes will be a strong enough shield to protect her son from the darkness that is waiting patiently to claim him. Chapter 5. The Fourth Generation, a Desperate Gamble. Daniel Blackwood grows up in a world of whispers. The whispers of the townspeople of Havenwood, who look at him with a mixture of pity and fear, the last surviving member of the Mad Blackwoods. The whispers of his mother, Clara, who loves him with a fierce, almost desperate intensity, her eyes always filled with a silent, unspoken worry. And the whispers of the rookery, the old decaying mansion that is both his home and his inheritance, its silent halls a constant, looming reminder of the tragic legacy that runs through his veins. Clara, armed with the knowledge from Alistair's diaries, raises Daniel in a carefully constructed bubble of normalcy. She fills his life with love, laughter, and a determined, almost defiant sense of optimism. She tells him that his father was a brilliant, misunderstood man, a man who loved him so much he was willing to do anything to protect him. She does not tell him about the curse, about the sleepless nights, the waking visions, the chorus of mad ancestral voices that drove his father to his death. But the curse is not something that can be hidden away in a locked diary. It is in Daniel's blood, a dormant, waiting darkness. As he grows into a young man, he begins to feel its subtle, insidious tendrils creeping into the corners of his life. He is not sleepless, not like his father and grandfather before him. He can sleep, he can dream. But his sleep is a restless, shallow thing, a brief, fleeting respite from a world that always feels a little too loud, a little too bright, a little too real. He is plagued by a constant, low-grade anxiety, a feeling of being watched, a sense that he is teetering on the edge of a precipice he cannot see. He is a solitary, introspective young man with his father's brilliant mind and his mother's gentle, compassionate soul. He feels like an outsider in the small, insular world of Havenwood, a town that has already written his story for him. He is the last of the Mad Blackwoods, a tragic, doomed figure destined to follow in his father's footsteps. When Clara dies peacefully in her sleep, Daniel is left truly alone for the first time in his life. The rookery, once a home filled with his mother's love and laughter, becomes a vast, echoing tomb, a monument to his family's tragic past. The whispers of the house grow louder, more insistent. Driven by a desperate need to understand the darkness that has always nibbled at the edges of his life, Daniel finally reads his father's diaries. The words on the page are a revelation, a terrifying, illuminating confirmation of the fears he has always felt, but never been able to name. He learns of the wakeful curse, of the 4 generations of his family who have been its victims. He learns of his father's desperate, fatal gamble, the dark ritual that he hoped would save him. And he learns of his father's final fragile hope, that his sacrifice had weakened the curse, that Daniel, the 4th generation, might have a chance to break the cycle. But Daniel, living in the shadow of the rookery, feels not a weakening of the curse, but a gathering of its strength. He feels it watching him, waiting for him, biding its time until it can claim its next victim. He knows that he cannot stay in Havenwood. He cannot live his life in the shadow of his family's madness. He must escape. He must find a new life, a new identity, a place where he is not Daniel Blackwood, the last of the Mad Blackwoods, but just a Daniel. He sells the rookery, the ancestral home that has been both a sanctuary and a prison for his family for generations. He sells it to a historical society for a fraction of its worth, his only condition that the library, with its collection of ancient, forbidden texts, be sealed off, never to be opened again. He packs a single suitcase, taking with him only his father's diaries and a small, faded photograph of his parents on their wedding day, a reminder of the love that once blossomed in the midst of madness. He leaves Havenwood without a word of goodbye, a silent, solitary figure disappearing into the vast, anonymous landscape of modern America. He changes his name, creates a new identity, and tries to build a new life for himself, a life free from the whispers of the past. For a while, it seems as though he has succeeded. He gets a job as a librarian in a quiet, sleepy town, a world away from the oppressive, suffocating atmosphere of Havenwood. He finds a simple, unassuming pleasure in the quiet, orderly world of books, a world where knowledge is power and the monsters are safely confined to the pages of fiction. He even finds love. He meets a woman named Sarah, a kind, gentle soul who knows nothing of his dark, complicated past. He tells her that his parents died in a tragic accident, a lie that tastes like ash in his mouth but is a necessary shield to protect her from the truth. They get married, they have a daughter, a beautiful, bright-eyed girl they name Lily, and for a few precious, fleeting years, Daniel allows himself to believe that he has finally outrun the curse. He has a family, a home, a life that is his own. He has broken the cycle. But the curse is not so easily defeated. It is in his blood, a patient, waiting predator. As Lily grows, Daniel begins to see the subtle, familiar signs. The same unnerving, adult-like intensity in her eyes, the same restless, nervous energy, the same wakefulness. Oh, Lily is not a sleepless child, not in the same way as her great-uncle Alistair. But she is a child who seems to exist in a state of heightened, almost painful awareness. She's sensitive to light, to sound, to the unspoken emotions of the people around her. She is a child who seems to see too much, to feel too much, to know too much. Daniel's carefully constructed world of normalcy begins to crumble. The old familiar anxiety returns, a cold, constricting fear that clutches at his heart. He knows that his father's sacrifice did not break the curse. It only even changed it. It transformed it from a curse of sleeplessness to a curse of something else, something more subtle, more insidious, more difficult to define. He watches his daughter with a growing sense of terror, seeing in her the reflection of his own tormented soul. He knows that he has not escaped the curse. He has only passed it on to the next innocent generation. He realizes that running away was a mistake. He cannot escape his past. He cannot outrun the darkness that is in his blood. He must turn and face it. He must find a way to end the curse, not just for himself, but for his daughter, for all the future generations of his family who are yet to be born. He makes a decision, a desperate, terrifying gamble. He must return to the source of the curse. He must return to the rookery. He must unseal the library, delve into the dark, forbidden knowledge that his father died to protect, and find a way to destroy the curse once and for all. He tells Sarah that he has to go away on a research trip, another lie that feels like a betrayal. He leaves his new life, his new family, the fragile, beautiful world he has built for himself, and he returns to the one place he swore he would never see again. He returns to Havenwood, to the old decaying mansion on the hill, to the whispering walls and the silent, watchful ghosts of his ancestors. He returns to face the darkness that has been waiting for him, patiently, for his entire life. He knows that this is his final, desperate stand. He will either break the curse, or he will be consumed by it, another tragic, forgotten chapter in the mad, sleepless history of the Blackwood family. Chapter 6. The Return to the Rookery. The town of Havenwood is a place frozen in time, its collective memory as long and unforgiving as a New England winter. When Daniel Blackwood, now a man in his late 30s, returns to the town he fled a decade earlier, he is greeted not with open arms, but with the cold, suspicious stares of a community that has never forgotten the dark, tragic legend of his family. The rookery, now the property of the Havenwood Historical Society, stands as a silent, brooding monument to the town's most infamous residents, as it is a popular attraction on the local ghost tour circuit, a place where teenagers dare each other to spend the night, and where the story of the Mad Blackwoods is whispered like a campfire tale. Daniel, using a pseudonym and claiming to be a historian, researching local folklore, gains access to the old mansion. Stepping through its heavy oak doors is like stepping into a half-forgotten nightmare. The house is a museum now, its rooms roped off, its furniture covered in dusty white sheets. But for Daniel, it is not a museum, it is a crime scene, a place saturated with the pain, madness, and despair of his ancestors. The whispers are still there, a faint, almost imperceptible hum beneath the floorboards, a cold breath on the back of his neck in the silent, empty hallways. He feels the house watching him, recognizing him, welcoming him home. His primary objective is the library. It has been sealed just as he requested, a heavy, iron-enforced door barring the way to the room that was the epicenter of his family's madness. It takes him 2 days of careful, patient work to break the seal, the screech of metal on metal echoing through the silent house like a scream. The air that rushes out of the sealed room is cold and stale, carrying with it the scent of old paper, dust, and something else, something ancient and faintly metallic, like old blood. The library is just as he remembers it, a chaotic, claustrophobic space, its walls lined with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, its floor littered with his father's frantic, obsessive research. And in the center of the room, on a large, ornate desk, lies his father's final unopened diary. Daniel's hands tremble as he opens the leather-bound book. The pages are filled with his father's familiar, spidery scrawl, but the words are not the mad, prophetic ramblings of his earlier diaries. This is the writing of a man who has achieved a terrible, lucid clarity. In this final diary, Alistair documents his descent into the dark, forbidden world of the occult. He writes of a pre-human entity, a being of pure disembodied consciousness that he calls the Watcher. It is this entity, he believes, that is the true source of the Blackwood curse. According to Alistair's research, the Watcher is a parasitic being that attaches itself to a single bloodline, feeding on the mental and emotional energy of its hosts. It denies them the solace of sleep, the respite of dreams, forcing their minds to remain in a state of perpetual heightened awareness. It feeds on their thoughts, their memories, their sanity, growing stronger with each passing generation. The ritual that Alistair performed on the night of Daniel's birth was not an attempt to destroy the Watcher, but to blind it. He sacrificed his own life to create a temporary psychic shield around his son, a shield that would make Daniel invisible to the entity, allowing him to live a normal, curse-free life. But Alistair, even in his final moments, knew that the shield was not permanent. He knew that the Watcher was a patient, persistent predator. It would wait, and it would adapt. As Daniel reads his father's words, a cold, terrifying understanding dawns on him. The curse has not been weakened. It has been evolving. It has learned to circumvent the shield, to manifest in new, more subtle ways. The low-grade anxiety, the heightened sensitivity, the restless, shallow sleep. These are not just personality quirks. They are the new symptoms of the curse. And Lily, his beautiful, innocent daughter, She is not just a sensitive child. She is the first of the new generation of the curse's victims, a generation that will be tormented not by sleeplessness, but by a slow, creeping erosion of their emotional and psychological well-being, their minds a fertile feeding ground for the hungry, ever-watchful entity. Daniel is consumed by a wave of guilt and despair. His father sacrificed his life for him, and he, in his ignorance, has squandered that sacrifice. He has created a new life, a new family, and in doing so, he has led the monster right to their doorstep. But despair is a luxury he cannot afford. He must find a way to finish what his father started. He must find a way to destroy the Watcher once and for all. He delves into his father's research, the collection of ancient, forbidden texts that line the library's walls. He is a man possessed. His sleepless nights a blur of frantic reading and desperate hope-fueled research. He learns of ancient banishing rituals, of complex astrological alignments, of forgotten, long-dead languages that are said to hold power over the beings that exist in the spaces between worlds. As he immerses himself in this dark, dangerous knowledge, he begins to feel a change in himself. The whispers in the house are no longer just whispers. They are voices, clear and distinct, calling his name. He begins to have visions, flashes of the past, just as his father did. He sees Silas, his grandfather, a silent, sleepless sentinel watching over his sleeping bride. He sees Alistair, his father, a tormented prophet scribbling frantically in his diary. He feels the curse, the presence of the Watcher growing stronger, its cold, invisible tendrils reaching out to him, testing the limits of his father's protective shield. He knows that he is in a race against time. He must find the answer before the curse consumes him, before he becomes just another mad, sleepless ghost in the haunted history of his family. His research leads him to a single, terrifying conclusion. There is only one way to destroy the Watcher. He must perform a ritual, a dangerous, complex ceremony that is the inverse of the one his father performed. He must not blind the Watcher. He must attract it. He must make himself a beacon, a lure, drawing the entity out of the shadows and into the open. And then he must trap it. The ritual requires a specific time, a specific place, and a specific set of circumstances. It must be performed on the night of a lunar eclipse in the oldest part of the rookery, the part of the house that was built on the ruins of an ancient pre-colonial settlement. And it requires a sacrifice, not a sacrifice of life, but a sacrifice of memory. To trap the Watcher, Daniel must willingly offer it his most precious memories, the memories of his wife, his daughter, the new happy life he has built for himself. He must offer the entity the very things he is fighting to protect. It is a desperate, terrifying gamble, a psychological and emotional sacrifice that may cost him his sanity, his very identity. But it is a sacrifice he is willing to make. He will not let his daughter, he will not let any future generation of his family suffer the same fate as his ancestors. Chapter 7. The Confrontation. The night of the lunar eclipse descends upon Havenwood like a shroud. A strange, eerie silence hangs in the air, the kind of silence that precedes a storm. The moon, full and bright, begins its slow, inexorable journey into the earth's shadow. Inside the rookery, in the cold, damp darkness of the cellar, Daniel Blackwood stands in the center of a complex hand-drawn circle of arcane symbols. He is surrounded by flickering candles, their light casting long, dancing shadows on the stone walls. The air is thick with the scent of burning herbs and old, forgotten magic. He is calm, his mind a still, placid lake. He has spent the last few days in a state of deep, focused meditation, preparing himself for the confrontation to come. He has said his goodbyes, not in words, but in his heart. He has looked at the photograph of his wife and daughter until their images are burned into his soul, a final desperate act of remembrance before he willingly offers them up to the darkness. As the moon begins to turn a deep blood red, Daniel begins the ritual. He chants in a low, monotone voice, the ancient, long-dead language feeling strange and unnatural on his tongue. The words are not just sounds, they are keys, unlocking doors to realms that are not meant for mortal minds. He feels a shift in the atmosphere of the cellar. The air grows cold, a deep, penetrating cold that seems to emanate from the very stones of the foundation. The candle flames flicker wildly, their light struggling against the gathering, unseen darkness. And then he feels it. A presence. A vast, ancient, and utterly alien consciousness. It is the Watcher. It has been drawn by his call, lured by the irresistible promise of a new, willing host. It does not have a physical form. It is a pressure in the air, a weight on his soul, a voice that speaks not in his ears, but in the deepest, most secret corners of his mind. "You have called, and I have come," the voice whispers, a soundless, sibilant hiss that is a chorus of 1,000 dead, forgotten voices. "You have broken your father's shield. You have invited me in." Daniel does not flinch. He continues his chant, his voice steady, his resolve unwavering. He knows that fear is the entity's weapon. He will not give it that power. The presence grows stronger, more oppressive. The cellar seems to dissolve around him, the stone walls melting away into a vast, starless void. He is alone, adrift in an ocean of pure, malevolent consciousness. "I have watched your family for generations," the voice continues, its tone a mixture of ancient amusement and a cold, predatory hunger. "I have tasted their thoughts, their fears, their despair. Your father was a fool. He thought he could hide you from me. But you are a Blackwood. You are mine. You have always been mine." The entity begins to probe his mind, its invisible tendrils searching for a way in, a crack in his mental defenses. It shows him visions, terrifying, disorienting images designed to break his will. He sees his ancestors, their faces contorted in a silent scream of eternal, sleepless agony. "You are not like the others," the voice whispers, its tone now a smooth, hypnotic caress. "You have your father's intellect, your mother's strength. You do not have to be a victim. You can be my partner. Together we can transcend the limitations of your mortal flesh. We can see all of time, all of space. We can be gods." It shows him visions of what could be. He sees himself as a powerful, immortal being, his mind a vast, limitless library of cosmic knowledge. He sees himself shaping the course of human history, his will a force that can move mountains and topple empires. But Daniel sees the lie that lies beneath the beautiful, seductive illusion. He sees that he would not be a partner, but a prisoner. His mind would not be his own. It would be a cage, a gilded, opulent prison for the Watcher's parasitic consciousness. He rejects the offer, his will a silent, unshakable shield. The entity, its seduction and its terror tactics having failed, finally unleashes its full raw power. It attacks his mind with a brutal, overwhelming force, a psychic sledgehammer designed to shatter his sanity and leave him a broken, empty vessel ready for occupation. The pain is unimaginable. It is a white-hot, searing agony that rips through his every nerve, his every thought, his every memory. He feels his sense of self beginning to dissolve, his identity fraying at the edges, his consciousness being torn apart. This is the moment of truth. This is the sacrifice. He knows that he cannot fight the entity's power. He can only endure it. And he can only endure it by giving it what it wants. With a final desperate act of will, he opens the floodgates of his mind. He offers up his most precious, most sacred memories. He gives it Sarah. He gives it the memory of their first meeting, of her kind, gentle smile, of the way her eyes lit up when she laughed. He gives it the memory of their wedding day, of the feel of her hand in his, of the quiet, simple joy of their shared life. He gives it Lily. He gives it the memory of the first time he held her in his arms, of her tiny, perfect fingers wrapped around his. He gives it the memory of her first steps, her first words, the sound of her laughter echoing through their small, happy home. He gives it everything. He offers up his love, his joy, his happiness, his very identity, a final, desperate meal for the hungry, ravenous entity. He feels the memories being ripped from him, torn from his mind like pages from a book. He feels a vast, empty, hollow space opening up inside him, a void where his love for his family used to be. And as the watcher greedily devours his sacrifice, as it is distracted, gorging itself on the beautiful, pure emotions it has craved for so long, Daniel speaks the final, binding words of the ritual. A brilliant, blinding light erupts in the cellar, a light so pure and so powerful it seems to tear a hole in the very fabric of reality. The watcher, caught in the trap, its psychic belly full and its defenses down, lets out a silent, soul-shattering scream. The light contracts, pulling the entity with it, compressing its vast, ancient consciousness into a single, infinitesimal point. The arcane symbols on the floor of the cellar glow with an almost unbearable intensity, their lines of power a cage of pure, unadulterated magic. And then, as suddenly as it began, it is over. The light is gone, the cold is gone, the presence is gone. Daniel Blackwood is alone in the cellar, surrounded by the dying embers of the candles. He is trembling, his body drenched in a cold sweat. He is alive. He is whole. But he is also empty. He tries to picture his wife's face, but he cannot. He tries to remember the sound of his daughter's laughter, but there is only silence. The memories are gone, sacrificed to the darkness, to save the very people he can no longer remember. He has won. He has destroyed the curse. He has saved his daughter and all the future generations of his family. But he has lost himself. He is a man without a past, a ghost in his own life. The confrontation is over, but the final tragic cost of the Blackwood curse is yet to be paid. Chapter 8. The Aftermath and a Fading Echo. In the gray, sterile light of the morning after, Daniel Blackwood emerges from the rookery, a man hollowed out, a stranger to himself. The world seems both intensely real and strangely distant, like a picture seen through a pane of thick, distorting glass. He has no memory of the woman he loves, no memory of the child he has saved. All that remains is a deep, aching void, a phantom limb of the soul where his heart used to be. He leaves Havenwood without a backward glance, the town and the cursed mansion on the hill, now just meaningless shapes in a landscape he does not recognize. He has his father's diaries, the leather-bound books, a tangible but incomprehensible link to a past that is no longer his. He is a man adrift, with no destination and no purpose. He wanders for time, a ghost haunting the bus stations and cheap motels of a country that feels alien and unfamiliar. He is driven by a single, inexplicable instinct: to move, to keep moving, as if he is trying to outrun the vast, empty silence that has taken up residence in his mind. Eventually, his aimless wandering leads him back to the small, quiet town where he had built a life for himself, a life he can no longer remember. He does not know why he is there. He is simply drawn by a faint, invisible thread, a fading echo of a love that has been erased, but not entirely extinguished. He sees them in a park, a woman with a kind, gentle smile and a little girl with bright, intelligent eyes. They are laughing, feeding the ducks by a small, sun-dappled pond. He feels a strange, powerful pull towards them, a sense of recognition, a feeling of profound, inexplicable loss. The woman looks up and sees him. Her smile falters. She sees a gaunt, haunted-looking stranger staring at her and her daughter with a desperate, hungry intensity. She pulls her daughter closer, a protective, instinctual gesture. Daniel sees the fear in her eyes, and it is a pain sharper and more real than anything he has felt since the ritual. He does not know who this woman is, but he knows, with a deep, soul-crushing certainty, that he has caused her pain. He knows that he is a threat to her, a shadow that has fallen over her bright, sunny world. He turns and walks away, the ache in his chest a physical, unbearable weight. He knows that he can never go back. He can never be the man he was. He has saved them, but he has also lost them. Forever. He finds a new life, a new identity in a city far away. He takes a menial, solitary job, a job that requires little thought, little interaction, little memory. His days are a monotonous gray routine, a welcome numbness that keeps the vast, empty silence at bay. He is a man living in a self-imposed exile, a quiet, anonymous existence that is a pale, washed-out imitation of a life. He does not know happiness. He does not know sadness. He only knows the void. But sometimes in the dead of night, in the small, empty apartment that is his new home, he has dreams. They are not the terrifying waking nightmares of his ancestors. They are faint, fragmented echoes of a life he once lived. He dreams of a woman's laughter, a sound so beautiful and so pure it makes his heart ache with a longing he cannot name. He dreams of a little girl's hand in his, so small, so trusting. He dreams of a feeling of love, a feeling so powerful and so profound that it transcends the boundaries of his erased memory. He wakes up from these dreams with tears streaming down his face, a man mourning a loss he does not understand. He begins to write. He does not know why. He is simply compelled by a force he cannot explain. He buys a notebook and a pen, and he begins to tell a story of a family haunted by a curse, a story of 4 generations of sleepless souls, a story of a man who sacrificed everything to save the people he loved. He writes as if in a trance, the words flowing out of him, a story that he should not know, a story that is not his to tell. He is not just a writer, he is a channel, a conduit for the voices of his ancestors, their pain, their madness, their love, their sacrifice, all pouring out of him onto the empty pages of the notebook. He is, in a way, creating his own diary, a new chapter in the tragic, haunted history of the Blackwood family. He is piecing together the fragments of his shattered self, not through memory, but through story. And as he writes, a strange, miraculous thing begins to happen. The void inside him, the vast, empty silence, begins to fill, not with memories, but with understanding, with empathy, with a deep, profound sense of connection to the family he has saved, but can never rejoin. He will never be the man he was. He will never have the life he lost. But he is no longer just an empty vessel. He is a storyteller. He is the keeper of his family's legacy. He has found a new purpose, a new reason to exist in the quiet, solitary aftermath of his great sacrifice. He is Daniel Blackwood, and this is his story. The final, tragic, and ultimately triumphant chapter in the long, sleepless saga of the family that never slept. Chapter 9. A Glimmer of Recognition. Years pass. Daniel, now living under the name of John, has carved out a quiet, solitary existence for himself in a bustling, anonymous city. He is a man of routine, his life a carefully constructed defense against the vast, empty spaces in his memory. He works at a used bookstore, a dusty, quiet haven where he is surrounded by the stories of others, a welcome distraction from the story he himself has lost. His own story. The one that poured out of him in a torrent of automatic writing is now a completed manuscript, a thick handwritten volume that he keeps locked away in a small wooden chest. He has read it only once, and the experience was a strange, disembodying one, like reading a detailed, intimate biography of a stranger. He recognizes the names, the places, the events, but he feels no emotional connection to them. They are simply words on a page, a story that belongs to someone else. He has accepted his fate. He is a man without a past, and therefore a man without a future. He lives entirely in the present, a series of quiet, unremarkable moments that string together to form a life that is not a life, but an existence. One day a young woman walks into his bookstore. She's in her late teens with bright, intelligent eyes and a cascade of dark, curly hair. There is something about her, a familiar intensity, a sense of an old soul in a young body, that makes Daniel's heart skip a beat. She's looking for a book on local folklore, and Daniel, in his quiet, professional way, helps her find it. As he hands her the book, their fingers touch for a brief, fleeting moment. And in that moment, something happens. A jolt, a spark, a flash of something. A memory, a feeling. He doesn't know what it is, but it is powerful, and it shakes him to his very core. The young woman, whose name is Lily, feels it too. She looks at the quiet, sad-eyed man behind the counter, and she feels a strange, inexplicable sense of connection, a feeling of home. She becomes a regular at the bookstore. She is a bright, inquisitive young woman, a student at the local university, and she is fascinated by the quiet, knowledgeable man who seems to know so much about the stories of the world, but so little about his own. They strike up a friendship, a quiet, tentative bond forged over a shared love of books and a mutual sense of otherness. Lily is a young woman who has always felt a little out of step with the world, a little too sensitive, a little too aware. She has always felt a strange, unspoken sadness in her family, a sense of a missing piece, a story that has never been told. Daniel, in turn, finds himself drawn to Lily in a way he has not been drawn to anyone since before. He enjoys her company, her sharp wit, her youthful optimism. She is a small, bright light in his gray, monotonous world. One afternoon, Lily is in the bookstore, helping Daniel sort through a new collection of old, donated books. She stumbles upon a small wooden chest tucked away in a dusty corner of the back room. "What's in here?" she asks, her curiosity piqued. Daniel, for a reason he cannot explain, feels a sudden, sharp pang of fear, protection. He tells her that it is just some old personal papers, nothing of any interest. But Lily is persistent, and Daniel, looking into her bright, inquisitive eyes, finds that he cannot say no to her. He opens the chest and takes out the handwritten manuscript. It's a story I wrote a long time ago," he says, his voice barely a whisper. A ghost story. Lily, an avid reader of all things supernatural and mysterious, begs him to let her read it. And Daniel, against his better judgment, agrees. Lily takes the manuscript home, and as she begins to read, her world is turned upside down. The story of the Blackwood family, of the wakeful curse, of the 4 generations of sleepless souls is not just a story to her, it is her story. She recognizes the names, the places, the events, not from memory, but from a deep instinctual blood-level knowing. She reads about Daniel, the man who sacrificed his memories to save his family, and she sees the quiet, sad-eyed man from the bookstore. And she reads about Lily, the little girl he saved, the little girl who was his daughter, and she sees herself, the missing piece of her life, the unspoken sadness in her family, the sense of a story that has never been told. It all clicks into place. The next day, she returns to the bookstore, the manuscript clutched in her hands, her eyes wide, with a mixture of shock, disbelief, and a dawning, miraculous understanding. She confronts Daniel not with an accusation, but with a question, a single, trembling, hope-filled question. "It's you, isn't it?" she asks, her voice barely a whisper. "You're Daniel. You're my father." Daniel stares at her, his mind a chaotic whirl of confusion and a strange, terrifying, beautiful feeling he has not felt in years. He does not remember her. He does not know her. But as he looks into her eyes, into the eyes of this beautiful, intelligent, compassionate young woman, he feels a flicker, a tiny, fragile, almost imperceptible glimmer of recognition, a fading echo of a love that was sacrificed but never truly died. He does not know what to say. He cannot confirm her words. He cannot give her the father she has been searching for her entire life. But he can give her the story. He can give her the truth. He can give her the legacy of the Blackwood family, a legacy not just of madness and despair, but of love, sacrifice, and an unbreakable, enduring bond that transcends the boundaries of memory itself. And in that moment, in the quiet, dusty silence of the old bookstore, a father and a daughter, strangers to each other, begin the long, difficult, and ultimately hopeful journey of finding their way back to each other, not through the shared memories of a past that has been lost, but through the shared story of a future that is yet to be written. Chapter 10. A New Beginning. The revelation of Daniel's true identity sends shockwaves through the quiet, carefully constructed lives of both Daniel and Lily. For Lily, it is the answer to a lifetime of unspoken questions, the key that unlocks the secret sadness that has always haunted her family. For Daniel, it is a cataclysmic event, a seismic shift in the foundations of his empty, memoryless existence. Lily, with a wisdom and a compassion far beyond her years, understands that the man standing before her is not the father she has always dreamed of finding. He is a ghost, a man haunted by a past he cannot remember. She cannot expect him to be the father he once was. She can only love the man he is now. She brings him home. The reunion with Sarah, his wife, is a scene of heartbreaking, bittersweet beauty. Sarah, a woman who has mourned the mysterious disappearance of her husband for years, is now faced with a stranger who wears his face. She sees the man she fell in love with, but his eyes are empty, his memory a blank slate. It is a strange, new, and often painful reality for all of them. They are a family pieced together from the fragments of a shattered past. They must learn to navigate a new kind of relationship, one built not on shared memories, but on a shared story. The story of the Blackwood family, the story that Daniel wrote, becomes the foundation of their new life together. They read it together, they talk about it, They cry over it. It is through the story of their ancestors that they begin to heal, to understand, to forgive. Daniel, surrounded by the love of a family he does not remember but is slowly, tentatively beginning to feel, starts to change. The vast, empty void inside him begins to fill, not with old memories, but with new ones. He learns to be a husband to Sarah again, not the husband he was, but a new man, a man who is falling in love with this kind, patient, and incredibly strong woman all over again. He learns to be a father to Lily, not the father he was, but a new man, a man who is in awe of this bright, compassionate, and fiercely loving young woman who is his daughter. The curse is gone, but its legacy remains. Lily, the first of the new generation, is not entirely free from its shadow. She is still a woman of heightened sensitivity, a woman who feels the world more deeply, more intensely than others. But she is not a victim. She is a survivor. And she, with the love and support of her family, learns to embrace her unique sensitivities, not as a curse, but as a gift. It has made her more empathetic, more compassionate, more human. A popular YouTube channel, Top 10 Cursed Families, once did a video on families with strange, unexplained afflictions, and Lily, watching it one day, realizes that her family's story, though tragic, is also a story of incredible strength and resilience. Daniel, Sarah, and Lily decide to make a pilgrimage back to Havenwood. They visit the Rookery, the old decaying mansion that was the stage for so much of their family's pain and suffering. But they do not see it as a place of ghosts and madness. They see it as a place of history, a place of remembrance. They stand in the overgrown gardens where Alistair and Clara were married, a testament to the love that can blossom even in the darkest of places. They stand in the library where Alistair and Daniel fought their desperate, lonely battles against the curse, a testament to the power of the human will to resist, to fight, to sacrifice. They visit the local cemetery and find the graves of their ancestors, Ilara and Silas, Alistair and Clara. They are not just names on a tombstone. They are family. They are a part of a long, unbroken chain of love, sacrifice, and survival. As they stand before the graves, a sense of peace settles over them, a sense of closure. The whispers of the past are finally silent. The ghosts of the Rookery are finally at rest. They leave Havenwood not as a family haunted by a curse, but as a family redeemed by love. They have faced the darkness of their past and have emerged into the light, stronger, more compassionate, and more connected to each other than ever before. Their future is unwritten. It will not be without its challenges, its echoes of the past, but it will be their own. They are the new generation of the Blackwood family, a family that is no longer defined by its sleeplessness, but by its wakefulness. A family that is fully, completely, and beautifully awake to the precious, fragile gift of life, of love, of a new beginning. The story of the Blackwood family is a chilling reminder that the past is never truly gone. It lives on in our blood, in our stories, in the secrets we keep. But it is also a story of hope, a testament to the enduring power of love and sacrifice to break even the darkest of curses. What secrets lie buried in your own family's past? What stories are waiting to be told? If you've been captivated by this journey into the shadows, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel, Sanctified Secrets, for more explorations into the mysteries that lie just beneath the surface of our world. Your support helps us to keep searching, to keep questioning, and to keep uncovering the sanctified secrets that connect us all.